Welcome back, Alpha Tech practicers. And before we move on, I want to tell you congratulations. If you made it so far in this course, it means you are on the right path to becoming a much better programmer. As I guess you've probably noticed by now, every new section that you start in this course is mostly based upon previous ones. So everything is related and every topic you study is important, and it's probably going to be used in one of the next sections. For example, you remember variables when we studied variables, and then we used them in the conditions section, as well as using other functions like input and output throughout most of this course and most of these challenges so far. And that's a very important note, guys, that I want you to pay attention to. Because you see, you are actually not allowed to jump from one section to another or miss any of the sections, because if you do, you're probably not going to understand anything in the next sections. I mean, anything at all. That's why I say it once again, you have to take all the challenges, to try them, to do them during every section, and also, once in a while, make a quick refreshment of the material learned so far, so it will be much more effective and easier for you. So, these are just some guidelines of what you should and what you shouldn't do to get the maximum knowledge and value out of this course. So I hope you got it, and now we can go back to our topic and introduce and talk about loops. And one of the best methods of explaining this topic, I think it should be done using some project that we've started previously and we keep on developing as we go. And of course, I'm talking about the calculator milestones we've taken previously. So previously it was just some basic calculator which supported just basic functionality, right? And now I want us to start perfecting it by adding more functionality, making it more like a real calculator. But before we move on to do so, and before any formal loops explanations, let us take a look at this following example. Suppose that you have to write a program that gets a number as input from the user, for example num of type int, and then the program has to print num in the power of 2 and num in the power of 3. So at this point you should already be able to solve these types of questions just with ease, right? And you can give it a try on your own before we proceed, but we are going to take a quick look and see the way we solve this question together. So first of all, we need to include the standard input-output, create the main function, and then we will declare a variable called num, and it will be of an integer type. And now let's print a message to the screen to let the user know that we are waiting for him to insert this number. And let's take this number that the user inserts and put it inside the num variable. And what we can do right now is simply to print the result of num in the power of 2, right? We make this calculation of num multiplied by num and display the result instead of this percentage d, instead of this placeholder. So this will be just the num in the power of 2. And similarly, we can print num in the power of 3 simply by multiplying num multiplied by num multiplied by num, which is a total of 3. So far so good, right? We had no problems getting some number from the user and printing its num in the power of 2 and num in the power of 3. But since we want to make some more advanced and sophisticated calculator that should know how to calculate num in any power, not just 2 or 3 like we can see in this example, any power that the user will provide, not just num in the power of 2 or num in the power of 3, but any power. I mean, it makes sense that we want this type of functionality, right? I mean, that's an important functionality for our calculator. We want to give the user the ability to specify not only the number itself, but also the power that this number will be raised in. For example, if the user was to provide num equals to 2 and a power of 6, then the result will be num in the power of 6, which is a total of 64. That's much better and much more functional and versatile application, isn't it? We simply provide here more options and abilities for calculation. So we can see if we run this program as it is right now, right? We can see an example. If we insert a number of 5, all right, this is num, then we always are going to receive just num in the square of 2 and num in the square of 3, and that's it. So let's now answer an important question. How can we do such a general program that will be able to calculate the power, any number in any given power, all right, and add it to our functionality? So take a minute to think about it and try to come up with a solution based on everything we've learned so far. So pause the video, try to think of the solution, write down your code, and check if it works on your computer. And once you're finished, we are going to go over it together here in our nice visualization screen. So now I hope that you tried this exercise on your own. If not, pause the video right now. It's so important to try tackling these things that you don't really know for sure how to solve them. It's so important because when you become a programmer, it's probably what you're going to face most of your career. Things that you are not sure how to solve. And this is a good start to begin with. So now let's think about the answer together and see if it's really possible to create such a program with the tools we were introduced with so far. And first of all, what I want us to do is to write some common template for our program. So like previously, we defined a num, we defined a num, and here we are going to define two variables, num and pow. And this pow is going to represent the power, and of course num is going to represent the number. And now we are going to print some message to the user, read the value, read the num, and now we are going to also read the power. The user is going to specify, which we didn't do this type of thing previously. The user is going to specify the power that he wants. So we are going to read this value and put it inside the pow variable. So up to this point, I guess we all did pretty much the same thing. We've just received from the user the number and its power. And just to let you know, guys, there is actually no built-in power operator in C. For example, we know that we can use an addition operator, which is a plus sign, or maybe multiplication operator, which is a multiplication sign, but there is no some standard mark for a power in C. And please don't tell me just use the math.h thing and so on. Guys, we didn't learn the necessary material for this usage yet, so please don't try to get ahead of time. We will get to these topics in the future, don't worry. For now, just use the tools we've learned so far in the course up to this point and try to solve these things just with these tools, okay? So we know that num in any power is simply num multiplied by num, a total of power minus 1 multiplications. For example, num in the power of 3 is simply num multiplied by num multiplied by num. Alright? So once again, if we have num in any power, then the result is num multiplied by num power minus 1 times. Alright? We repeat the multiplication process, power minus 1 times. Alright? So now we also know a little bit about math. And that should be the point where you've got stuck. Because, I mean, can you know in advance how many times should you multiply a number that you receive from the user? You can't do that, right? You don't know this much in advance. You could simply write down, like we've used right here, you can multiply num multiplied by num, which is a num in the power of 2, or num in the power of 3. But that wouldn't be the right answer, because if the user specifies a power of 4, what should you print? Should you print num in the power of 2 or in the power of 3? That just doesn't make any sense. So basically what we want to have is something like this. We want to use a printf function and printf functionality that will be seen like this guy here, right? Num in the power of pow equals to num multiplied by num multiplied by num and so on, pow minus 1 times, like we can see in the formula here on the right at the top. And that's not something that we can do with the tools we've learned so far. And this is exactly the point where we should introduce our new body called loops. You see, guys, when we want to calculate a num in some power, what we are actually doing is repeating some process of multiplication over and over again, right? We are simply multiplying num by num a certain amount of times, and whenever there is a repetitive process or a bunch of commands which are being run over and over again, we should start thinking of loops as something that can help us with solving this task. So let us see the structure of loops and a couple of basic examples with using loops in C, and then we will come back to the powers example to add the pow functionality to our calculator, alright? So I'll see you in the next video.